about fear, when you were talking about helmets, it's interesting to me that the people who say that they don't need to wear one, they say this goofy thing to me that if you wear a helmet, you will take risks because you think you're safe. And they'll say you can't protect your neck or your back. So it's silly to even think you can wear a helmet and make a difference. Oh my gosh. I totally disagree, but I just say, well, I'm just a doofus. I've only been riding for X number of years, and doggone it, for 19 years as of today.
Yeah, well, I'm 82 and I started riding when I was 2, so I've been doing this 80 years. And you won't see me without a helmet, but in the bush I never wore a helmet. Nobody did. And did they get hurt? Yes, all the time. Did they get killed? Yes. From time to time, yes. Did they have severe head injuries? Yes. Lots of people walking around those little country towns. Ooh,
There's a need for a village idiot, but it could have not been them.
Yeah. So,
I watched a woman give a lecture once about undifferentiated fear, and it makes so much sense to me because I have got this lady that I used to ride with the most, and I loved it. She's a retired nurse. It was like I had my own little, assistant that if I got hurt, well, I've got my, ER, right here. Well, when she ended up needing to be the primary caregiver for her elderly parents, all of a sudden she started thinking, Red doesn't look real good today. Red's kind of off his feed. Red isn't really up to riding. And it just got worse and worse to the point where she just sort of stalled him somewhere and stopped riding completely. And then I saw Julie Goodnight do a lecture at an equine affair, and she talked about how the girl who used to ride bareback across the mountains and was fearless, a teenager who'd go like the wind, has her first baby, and all of a sudden something kicks in that says, if you get damaged and you can't keep this baby, you can't take care of it, the baby might die. And so it's a way that the fear is about your capability and you accept the risk as unacceptable. It's very interesting. I mean, for me, yes, I know it's the most dangerous sport, but my gosh, I spend my time at work worried about something this big, and then I move on to the next postage stamp of skin. And I'm under bright lights, and I'm working so hard. When I'm out on the trail, I'm looking at the horizon and the eagles and the hawks. It's the antidote. And I can't really walk very well after a bit of an unplanned dismount. And so if I can't walk more than a city block or so, I can ride 10 miles on my mule. And so that his legs become my legs. And so for that, yeah, I'll accept that there's a risk, but I'm riding in a Colin Dangaard Australian saddle with double pulleys. And so I think, okay, I've changed my level of risk.
Yeah, well, quick word on risk and fear. Fear, I think, is a very valuable quality and reaction that we have, and it's not to be denied. I steeplechased for years, and I feared a lot to the start of the race, and I got to embrace the fear, say, this is wonderful. Your body gets so tuned, you can hear a bird right out there. I'm galloping, flat, gallop. You're doing 3-foot jumps, clearing them, and you hear a bird. How sharp is that? I can feel every movement of the horse. Why? Because I'm halfway terrified. I remember talking to this one kid at the start of one of these races, a young boy, and he was white. And I could see we were waiting for the flag to drop, and I could see he was a little bit tense about that. I come up beside him on my big old horse Tower, and I know Tower was a fantastic horse. He'd jump anything, run anything, do anything. If I had the guts to do it, he'd do it. So I said to this young boy, I said, it's an exciting day, isn't it? He says, I'm terrified. I says, well, really, you've got a good-looking horse there, so I wouldn't worry too much. And he says, aren't you worried? Are you terrified? I said, yeah, here I am. He says, you're terrified, and how many steeple chases you done? I said, I know, lost count. And he says, and you're terrified? I says, yeah. Embrace it, my boy. Feel the fear.
Yeah.
It's going to ride with you.
Yes.
And then I could see the starter is just going to drop the flag. And he says, where should I be? Where should I be? Well, should I be in front? Yeah, but if you crash, we're all going to jump over the top of you. Should I be in the back? Well, I don't know. Somebody crashed in front, you're going to jump over them. What about the center? And I can see the flag's just about to drop, and he says, stay out of the center. That's where I am, mate. Goodbye.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you tattoo somebody, there's adrenaline, encephalons, and endorphins. So you've got adrenaline, which is the fear, because even though you've agreed to this and you're paying me to hurt you, even so, you're agreeing to this. Okay, so you're just all pumped up with that. And then when the pain starts, your body floods you with other chemicals. So it's the same exact thing. You face the thing you're afraid of, you say you're going to do it, and it starts to happen, and the event gives you chemical back, you know, it gives you the go power.
It's funny that you mentioned that. That's the first time I've had an analysis of why I felt that steeplechasing. That's exactly what happened to me. I'd be fearing at the start of it, but once I got going, I'm feeling the heat of the horse, and there's somebody coming up to me. I think, well, I'm going to cut him off. I'm going to grab his bridle or something and get rid of that guy. He's done like him on my ass.
Stock whip.
Yeah, I'll do something untoward. But the fear was there, but it was nice. It was good. I felt great. So
and you feel more like yourself when you've conquered it. When you get done, you're just all pumped up with something. You have accomplished something.
Yeah. After every steeplechase, I'd be yelling and screaming and carrying on. And it's the same when I'm riding in these hills in Malibu. I'll find some big, bad, nasty drop-off, and I'll look at it for a while, and I ride with these people who are crazy enough to ride with me. I say, yeah, we're going down there. They say, well, can the horse do it? Well, if he doesn't, we'll find out, but we're going to do it. I figure they can do it, okay? They don't want to fall any more than we do, and that's the fact with the horse. But you know, so you do have some fear, but it's good to have fear, because if you don't have any fear and you're taking great chances, that makes you an idiot. You get no feeling at all. Well, that makes you an idiot, doesn't it? You know, you've got to have fear.
You know, when I get on the mule, I'm doing everything I can to not fall off and to not have him think that I'm in fear. So I have this little ritual where I'm getting on and I stop right before I put my foot in the stirrup and I say a little prayer. And that prayer is 3 people's names that got me from being a doofus that couldn't tell a mule from a horse. And now I've been riding my own for all these years. And I say their names out loud. And I take a big breath because I want that mule to feel gratitude when I get on him. I want that to be what's exuded from my legs when I sit down. I am so grateful that I'm going to go ride for 6-10 miles. And I could never walk that trail. But with him, I can see all that. And I can join with him in that connection. And I know that he would feel it if I got on him and I was like, oh, I hope I don't fall off. He would feel that and he'd be looking around. What are we afraid of? He'd be looking for something. He wouldn't know that it was me. He would be thinking it's something external that we should join in the fear. Instead, I want him to feel gratitude. I'm grateful to the universe and to him.
That's fantastic. What a great thing. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, the horse is a great vehicle to experience your fears in a way that's manageable, I would say. You know, you can drive your car and you can have an accident in a flash and end up in a terrible wreck, but driving a car you don't fear. It's not like a horse. You're driving along and you check the gauges, check this, check that. Yeah, feeling good. So looking at the countryside going by. So you're not in fear driving a car. But if you don't have some level of fear riding a horse, then you're actually in a bit of danger, if you ask me, because that's close to going to sleep. So you go to sleep on a horse or a mule, you got a problem.
And they know it.
Yeah.
They know what you know and they know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And they know when you're paying attention. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that.
It's like when I ride, I mostly like to ride alone, but you shouldn't do that, because I'd be dead if people didn't know where I was, because I've been found unconscious. So it's not smart to ride alone. You should ride with somebody in case something happens.
I like 3, because then if somebody gets injured, somebody can stay with them. Somebody else goes for help.
Yes.
So I try to do 3. And, what I do is I have a meet-up group. So I have my regular guys. If they say they can do a ride, I set the ride. And then a couple of wild cards come that we don't know at all. And we ride to the least rider. And that may mean that person can't control their horse very well at all. And I'll tell them, you stand next to the big guy. Come on now. And just track stirrup to stirrup with my mule. And you can see a horse that was fussing and frightened and out of its depth take a breath and think, oh, there's a herd leader. And he doesn't need to be in charge, but he's big and he's confident. Mm-hmm. And he knows we're just going down this trail. It's a calm thing.
I actually love to ride alone, because I can communicate with my horse better, and that's what I want to do. I love doing mind changes like you do with your mules. You get a flash, I look at a rock, and I'll do little tests. I'll be riding along and I'll concentrate on a rock or a bush or something and concentrate on it. Then I'll look at my horse and try to project a picture of that rock to that horse. And 9 times out of 10, he'll look at the rock. And I haven't done anything to my body to indicate that turn. In fact, sometimes I try and confuse them.
You tip your hips as though you're looking that way.
Looking that, but I'll be the image of that rock or that bush or whatever it is. I've imaged in my mind. I'll be sending it very sharply to my horse, and it's amazing. 9 times out of 10, they pick it up. And if they don't pick it up, I'll try it again, and they do pick it up the second time. But I think it's in my transition and in my projection of the image rather than their reception of the image. Mm-hmm. I've made a mistake. Mm-hmm. I'm not.
And that's something that you talk about in your book, Talking with Horses.
Yes.
That's exactly what you describe your protagonist being able to do with her horses, being able to imagine herself over the jump through the maze of things she had to do with it, and being able to have the horse pick up her direction from her thoughts.
Yeah, I wrote that book. My wife was dying at the time when I started the book, and I wanted to write a horse book, and I thought, well, I just don't want to write a horse book, but I would rather explore this idea of how we communicate with horses, which is old. It's 1 million years old, 2 million years, I don't know, but it's millions of years old, how we communicate with them. And I realized from when I was very, very young and I couldn't talk myself in those days. I had a very bad speech impediment. So I'd talk to my horse all day long, mind to mind. And it was amazing how I took it that I could speak to my horse. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing that, I'm now 16 years old, and then I'm speaking very fluently, but it was all due to speaking to the horse and having to slow down. Because when you talk with a dog, you don't say, hello dog, how you doing? You don't say, oh, there's my little doggy, and how are you? You speak slowly. Well, that's how you go with the horse, isn't it? Queenie was my horse. I'd say, oh, Queenie, how you doing, Queenie? And pat her on the neck. Are you good today? Well, then I thought, wait a minute. All I did was talk to the horse, but I'm speaking slowly. So I could enunciate. You start enunciating, and then pretty soon I'm riding through the bush, talking to myself. Hello, how are you?
Hello, tree.
Hello, tree.
Well, and that reminds me about how when I was studying with Jerry Tindall, I was plow reining. I was saying, oh, you want me to go to the left? I'll drag his nose to the left with my reins. No. This mule can go neck rein. Really? You can move away from pressure that subtle? You just lay the rein a little bit on the neck and the mule would go, thank you, and just do it. And everything he taught me was ask for one step. You want to arc the neck? Okay, do 2 inches. Now ask for 2 more inches. Don't ever force the animal into doing a big movement when you can ask for a little, and then eventually they'll do the whole sweep of what you want. And that took a long time. And I didn't know that how badly I was doing it until I started getting videotaped. And I'd be saying, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And then I was doing that. I'd look at the video and, look at me. And then I was able to correct my behavior better because I could see myself and what we were doing.
I think it's wonderful being so close to the horse, in your case, the mules, being so close to these animals that they can correct us and they, in fact, heal us from many things. If I'm stressed for some reason or other, I get on a horse and ride through these beautiful hills, and I'm not thinking about any stress at all. I'm rather talking to my horse and, how you doing, how's it going,
You know, I have several clients that they've got kids that now think that they're transgender, and they've threatened to commit suicide if they don't get to change their body parts and all of this. So they've got them in facilities that have horse programs. And I really encourage the parents. I think this is their chance to make some breakthroughs here, because my opinion is that the horse doesn't care if you're happy or sad. What they don't like is if you're dissembling. You're walking up going, hi, horsey, I love you. And you're really terrified. That horse will back away from you because it doesn't like you to be lying to it. And that you can lie to yourself and maybe to the people, but you cannot lie to the equine because they have a deeper sense of your true emotional state. Because, see, I think that they live in a world of emotion, not a rational world. So, for instance, I taught Tobe to smile for a carrot. And it took one day, and he figured it out that, got him a carrot. Okay, so I come up there, and there's these little kids come up to the fence, because he's right next to a public park, and they're throwing carrots over, and they're saying, chompers, we brought you something. I said, why do you call him chompers? Well, he smiles at us. He shows us his teeth. And then they throw the carrot. So see, I trained him. He trained them. I think he now believes that he can train other people to give him a carrot when he cracks a smile. And so I bring people up, and they stand at the gate to the paddock. And here he is. He's like a zoo animal. I mean, he's so big. And I don't let him go in the paddock, but they stand at the gate, and they're just, God, he's so big. And then behind him I go, and he smiles. And all of a sudden, that fear that was wafting off of them, which for him must be like a potent smell, all of a sudden it goes to, oh my, did he just smile at me? And he can feel the difference. Now he's being buffeted with happiness. Of course he wants to cause that. He knows how to interrupt their emotional state and make them have the other one.
Wow.
That's cool. But that's because he's an emotional animal. He's more in that world. He's not going to plot. He's not going to, all right, here they come out of the car. That means they might have some carrots with them. I'm looking for the bag. He's not going to plot. He's just going to think, well, sometimes it works. Give him a smile. Although if I drive up there in a vehicle and I have my horse trailer attached, he's a whole different creature. Otherwise, if I come up there just with my little town car, he lets me put the halter over his face, over the fence. He'll lean over the gate. Sure, put the halter on me. Let's go somewhere. If the trailer's there, he may or may not be in the mood. We might have to have some discussions. But usually a carrot makes all the difference.
As you look around our society today, it seems to be a lot of turmoil, a lot of conflict, not just amongst ourselves, but amongst other nations who were our friends or are our friends. And do we know do we know if any nations are our friends anymore? There seems to be a world of turmoil, and particularly in America, people shooting crowds and crazy stuff like this that just didn't seem to happen before. I wonder if it did happen, only we didn't hear about it. Now, if it happens, everybody hears about it immediately. So, not quite sure if it's more delivery of something that's always happened, or it is in fact happening more.
If you were in the Middle Ages, unless you were some kind of royalty or military, you probably never went more than 50 miles from the place where you were born. And that was probably true in every century, all the way up to the point where we got horses. And all of a sudden, you could go further than you could walk.
Yes.
Horses made that change.
But do you think that some of this modern behaviour, and I mean behaviour right now in this country, is due to the fact that we've distanced ourselves from horses? You got a beautiful dog here, and you got beautiful mules, and so you're into animals up to your ears. But not everybody's like that. In fact, there are very few people like that.
People, like, right now, people think that they're creative when all they can do is type. But what I meant by the staying where you were born, people, if you wouldn't dare walk 50 miles, you'd get killed on the roads. There always would be brigands and robbers and thieves. There always would be evil people. And so, like in the age of castles, Irish wolfhounds, they were royalty and bards. So you'd have your harp and a couple of these guys. Then when it was dinner time, they'd go off and catch a couple of rabbits, and you'd cook them up and split them with the dogs, and nobody's going to mess with that guy. He's going to live to get to the next castle and sing for his supper there. People have always needed to defend themselves against evil people. What's happening now is that we have media, so we know about lots of things. We know. I mean, up in Santa Barbara, there's a wrong-way driver on the freeway once a week. Did this always happen? Well, now I get an alert. People get shot all the time. Terrible things are going on. Is it worse than it was? I don't know. But I know that we have media that tells us about it, and so it glorifies the event, and you get copycats and people being crazy. I don't know.
Do you think we're lacking leadership? We should have stronger leaders, or a leader who says, I used to remember in America when I first came here, they'd have like Saturdays or Fridays or something where the president would have sit down and like sort of more or less talk to the people.
Right.
And I don't see that anymore. I don't see our presidents doing that anymore, where they have a public day. People could call in or something, and it doesn't seem to happen anymore. It doesn't seem to be a direct address from our leaders anymore to the people. They get voted in, and if you want to contact them, well, you can go through 5 secretaries or something. But there doesn't seem to be any public access to them, or visible public access, access that other people could see they were being accessed.
I dealt over the last couple of years quite a bit with Board of Supervisors and other groups like that, either by Zoom or by showing up. And I was just the one-trick pony. I was complaining about how we wanted to keep our favorite trail system equestrian only. So here I am. The bicycle people have lots of lobbying. But I showed up and one or two other people to try to speak for the horses. But I was so sadly disappointed in all of these government officials. They would be checking their phone, practically doing their nails while the public contact section, and they'd make you wait an hour and a half to do your 3 minutes. They forget that they work for us and we pay for them. I think that sense of civic responsibility and important representing the will of the people, I think that's what's lost. And I think the people at all levels of government are doing what's their own agenda instead of an educated public being willing to tell them what they want. When I was back in college, I was an interviewer, market research interviewer for Gallup poll, Lewis Harris poll, Princeton Research. And I found out that the country of New Zealand at that time, so this is the late 70s, put out a paperback book that was every single citizen in New Zealand was supposed to fill out, fill in the bubbles. Do you think this or this? And the entire nation was supposed to give their opinion on a million things and then return the book. And they were going to computer tabulate it. We need that.
Yes.
We need a way that people feel like they can speak back, speak truth to power, so that they feel represented. Because I think right now we've got a split 50-50 down the middle, and it's depending on which media you pay attention to. I know people that absolutely will not speak to somebody if they think they support the other kind of politician. That's the opposite of how it ought to be.
Yes, we're all Americans. We're all here together.
I have this vision of 1950, and Bob and Dave get really drunk at the cocktail party, and one's a Republican and one's a Democrat, and they act like they hate each other. And the next day, they're both out doing their lawn in the suburb. Hi, Bob. Hi, Dave. It's done. And I have lost people because I said something on Facebook, or I did a T-shirt supporting a certain political person that half the country hates. And I lost people that I thought were friends for 10 years. They would literally say, I can no longer speak to you because now I know your true politics. This is insane. I mean, it's like religion. If it gets you up in the morning and you get your clothes on and you're nice to people all day long, you can believe whatever you want to believe. It's really not my problem. And politics, too. You can have all kinds of political thoughts, and I can think you're nuts, but it's not going to stop me liking you. We can just go to a different topic.
Well, I think America is one of the last countries in the world where you can actually go public with what you're saying. But, however, that said, that's got its pitfalls too. We're all into selling something. You're into selling tattoos, I'm into selling saddles, and everybody's selling something. So if you say something publicly that half the people are not going to like because you're supporting this leader and not their leader, well, you could lose them as clients. Is that good business? No. So I think successful business defines you to be, or demands that you be apolitical, really, that you've got to be down the centre, and you tend to keep your views to yourself. Which
you have to.
Which in its own way is a bit sad, really, that we
It's
can't.
self-censorship, and then it leads to fear.
Yes.
Because you're afraid of being ostracized for what you think is a moral position, but you can't express it.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of being ostracized as much as I am saying something that I know is going to offend somebody who's going to give me a credit card for $3,000 to buy one of my expensive saddles. I'd rather keep that opinion to myself. You know what I mean? So it's a self-censorship, isn't it?
Well,
so
yes,
is
absolutely. Well, when I'm tattooing people, my favorite thing to talk about is their dogs.
Oh, wonderful.
It's totally safe.
Yeah.
Very few people hate dogs.
Yeah.
And I've got on this new jag where, I've been self-employed my whole life. I insist on it. So I say to them, what do you do for a living? God, I can't even imagine what your day is like. Would you walk me through a day at work? I'd love to know what it's like for you. Well, I show up at the office, and then they tell me about it. Or they stay home all day working at home since the debacle of the vax and all the rest. So then they don't even interact with anyone. They're just at home, and they type and talk on the phone maybe.
A lot of those people have stayed there too, haven't they? They didn't go back to work, which
percentage.
Which has caused a bit of a problem in the employment situation.
And San Francisco, half of the buildings that used to be .com buildings are empty, and yet they have thousands of people on the street. So there is no incentive to convert those office buildings into some kind of housing.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big problems in America is the unhoused, homeless, whatever you want to call it. And you wonder what percentage of I don't believe the people who are unhoused are there because they want to be there. I think they're there because they fell through the cracks, or they lost their job, or they lost their fortune, they lost their house, or they did something. But I think it's a rough. America's just a rough place to go broke in.
Well, and the real issue is if they hit the skids, and then the way that they can deal with that is drugs, then there may be no way back.
Yes.
They may destroy themselves so much that in the old days we'd put them in a mental institution and care for them. But since we've closed those down, what we've got is a huge number of people that are truly damaged and can't get themselves out of the situation that they're in.
Well, drugs are powerful. They're a powerful thing. I don't do any drugs, don't even drink, but I've certainly had my experience with drugs way early on, and all I can say is drugs were good. I felt great. Were they good for me? Of course not. Did they practically destroy me? Of course they practically destroyed me. Did they? No, because I cut it off. But you gotta do that. So I admire people who actually do that, who say, well, this is it. Drugs is not the way. They feel good. And the thing about one thing all drugs have in common is they feel good. If they didn't, nobody would take them. And do they make you feel better? Yeah, for a while. Then you're in a hell of a mess, from my observation. And I enjoyed drugs and I enjoyed drinking. Man, I used to like drinking. Then one day I was driving in my truck, about 15 years ago, I guess, and I had a horrendous wreck. And it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And when all the debris stopped and there was gasoline smell and there's debris everywhere in the cab of the truck, and I'm thinking, this is a hell of a hit. And I can see there's a lady over there. She's fallen out of a car that I've hit this car. And I think, God. And the first thought that occurred to me was that how lucky I haven't been drinking. Because I can get out of this cab and a police officer is going to say to me, have you been drinking? And I'll say, no. But as I was standing there holding the steering wheel, which I'd torn off a steering column of a truck, okay? Oh. How do you do that? With your bare hands. And I was holding it without, and wasn't attached to the steering column. And that's how severe the impact was, but how quick I was able to stop that steering wheel going through my chest, and obviously would obviously have killed me. So right there, and I'm sitting in this cab, I decided, that's it. I'd be dead if I'd had a drink. And let's face it, 2 hours from now I would have had a drink, because I always started drinking about 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, somewhere there. Why not? So I thought, I'd be dead. So right there I decided I was never going to drink again, ever. And so the debris stops, the cops come, there's police cars everywhere, and I get out of the cab, and the police officer looks in the cab and he says, oh my God, he says, you got to be hurt. Are you hurt? And I says, no. He said, you know, you went through a stop sign. I said, I did. He says, yeah, look back there. And I look back and I can't see it. I says, where's the stop sign? And I couldn't see it. He says, well, it's behind those trees, behind the branches. I didn't see it. It was hidden by branches. He couldn't see it either. He just knew there was a stop sign there. I said, well, can you see it? No, I can't. Yeah, no, I can't. But he says, it's there. I said, well, I didn't see it. So anyhow, he says, you got to be hurt. And I says, no, I'm okay. He said, have you been drinking? And I said, I don't drink. And it wasn't a lie, because I decided 5 minutes before I'd never drink again. So of course I don't drink. I said, no, I don't drink. And he says, oh, well, that's good then. okay. And I said, but I want you to give me a sobriety test. And then he's a bit confused. He says, you said you don't drink and now I want you maybe to give you a sobriety test? What's this about? I said, well, my insurance company might want to know. So let's have a test. And so he gave me a sobriety test. He's very angry, very pissed off. And he says, yeah. So yeah, fine. And but that's when I never had another drink after that moment. So I think it must take moments in big things like that. And I never thought I was a drunk. Well, I wasn't a drunk. I never got any DUIs or any of that stuff, and I was very careful about when and how I drank. But that doesn't make any difference. If you've been drinking and you have a wreck, and the cops come and they look at you, and you've been drinking, and they look at the other person who hadn't been drinking, well, guess who's going to go for the row? You are.
And your life will be ruined for $10,000 in California.
Oh, yeah.
And no license for 6 months.
And it stays on your record. It's like a dead fish hanging around your neck. It'll be there
Insurance
forever.
Is more forever, yes.
Yeah, forever. And, that's just, so I admire people who quit.
Well, when I was in the hospital and you visited me, there were a couple days during that woolly fire where the hospital was surrounded by smoke, and it overcame the air conditioning units, and they had me on one of those ventilator things with a mask for a couple of days. Now, you're not supposed to ever do that. It ruins your lungs. And so it's okay during surgery, but not for days. And I haven't smoked pot since. And I was a everyday smoker all during high school, and a recreational for all the years since.
Yeah.
But I just thought, my gosh, that can't have been good for my lungs. I can't justify something that's going to then damage them further.
Mm-hmm.
And then along came COVID, and that's lung carried. And I just thought, oh, good thing I'm not smoking. Maybe I'll smoke in the future someday. It just hasn't happened because I put a limit. I just said, that's not healthy.
Years ago, I lived in Hong Kong, and that was when the Vietnam War was on, and Hong Kong was full of drugs and wildlife, and it was one hell of a place to be, and to be in my not yet even 20, and I'm editor of a newspaper, and I got all the money in the world, and I certainly splashed it around and had one hell of a good time. And I used to smoke opium with the rickshaw boys and all that stuff, and it was great. Laying there with your head on a brick and smoking this opium, and it was very, very good.
And watching dreams.
Opium was very good. And then I went from there to doing. Trouble is, the opium made you sleepy, and I'd be doing that all night, and then I'd have to go to work. Be at work at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Without having actually slept.
No sleep. So I'd take off my shirt, and you could buy a new white shirt for like the equivalent of about 10 cents or 50 cents or something. And so put on a new shirt, trash the old one, and go into the office. And then I bet I'd be a bit groggy because I'm a bit hungover from the opium. So I found a magnificent cure for that. Speed.
Oops.
Prelude. We used to call it Preluluden. And it was a German thing. My German doctor gave it to me. I said, Doctor, I'm having trouble staying awake during the daytime. He says, probably because something you're doing all night. And I says, yeah, but I don't want to throw up the night stuff, and I just want to stay functioning during the day. So he was a Russian guy. Don't know why I said that, but he was. Anyhow, so he gave me a whole bunch of Preluden, and it was wonderful. Just knock over one of them, and you go, whoop, yes, I'm so sharp. Oh, yes.
Well, the Germans invented methamphetamine.
Yes.
They gave it to their soldiers in World War II.
Yep, and
the
pilots, and that was they could fly for 3 days, and stay awake and stay cognizant.
As long as they had fuel,
they
could keep on flying.
Yeah, well, and I found it great, but then I got to be looking for it. I can say, yeah, I can party all night and I can take this in the morning, so they'll be safe. Well, No, not really.
My rule was always, I don't want to do anything that I'm not myself if I don't have it. And those things take you pretty quickly to that point.
But this was Hong Kong, so you'd never be without it. You always had access to it. There was all over the place. But then one day I said to myself, I'm out of here. I just can't do this anymore. And, I never took another drug.
I had a client, he's become a friend. He was in the Navy and he was in Hong Kong, and he went to the Street of Snakes.
Oh, yeah.
And they
Know it
give
well.
you a Hennessy with a poison sac from a cobra
Yes.
dropped into it. They kill the snake right in front of you, pop out one of its 2 sacs, drop it in your little 2 fingers of Hennessy, and you shoot it back. And he said the greatest thing, if people ask him what it was like, it was a bell ringing in my soul. And his friends had him, he was down on the ground barking like a dog and just being an animal. He completely flipped over, and then after a couple of hours, they dragged him back to the ship. But for him, it was a bell ringing.
Yeah, when I first got this job at the newspaper in Hong Kong, the editor was this crazy guy, Graham Jenkins. He was so funny. He's so odd. Anyhow, I get hired, and just then, an Australian Chinese guy, Alfie Lee. He was the editor, but he had to leave all of a sudden. Then another editor took over, Steve Dunleavy, who was a famous Australian journalist. He took over from him, and then he had to leave because everybody was doing things that was unbecoming of in a British Crown colony, which Hong Kong was then. So Jenkins says to me, "Well, looks like you're the editor." And I says, "Yeah, I can handle that, no trouble
Does
at all."
Susie Wong come with the job?
He says, I got to tell you, he says, the Chinese don't like you, you know that. And I says, yeah, I suspect that. And he says, so good luck on that. They've never accepted any Guaylo for this job at all, ever. So he says, if you can think of something, I'm with you. So I said, yeah, well, if I fire anybody, you can't rehire them. He says, yeah, fine. That's a deal. I said, that's a deal. Okay. So I go out and get on a chair and announce that I'm the new editor, and they think this is a joke. They really. So one of them turns to the other guy, says something. I says, hey, you, what's your name? And he said, something Wong. I says, well, something Wong, your ass is out of here. You're fired. Well, I haven't done anything. Well, you don't need to do anything for me to fire you, okay? You're out of here.
Setting the tone for your administration.
So thereafter, they really, that kind of set the tone for things, and they then sort of feared me. And I thought, well, that's not very nice. I don't want them that way. I want them like on my side a bit. So I announced I was going to have a luncheon. So I sent somebody out to the streets to come back with all kind of delicacies and things, and gave them a lot of money to buy all the stuff. And so he came back, and I said, make sure you bring some snake back, some live snake. And he says, yeah, oh, we love that. So they got this big box of live snakes, as well as lobster and crabs and all that stuff. And so it came with service, and the waiter took the snakes around, and everybody picked their snake that they wanted, and then he had a ring on his finger with a scalpel under it, and he'd skin it right there, and
wow, like a rooster gaff.
Right, yeah. And then he just curled it in your boiling soup there, and you had snake soup.
Yeah.
And he came to me, and I'm at the head of the table, and he's just going to cut the snake, and I says, no, I'll take the snake myself. Oh, okay. So I grabbed the snake by the head's here, and it wraps itself around me like this, and everybody's looking at me. What's this Guaylo doing? Must be crazy. And I says, everybody, we are all together here. I'm your leader, but we are all together. we're all rowing the same boat, okay? I can be tough, but I can also be nice. Your choice. Ate it live. And crunched it. I was crunching it like this. Say, yeah, beautiful. It's wrapped around my hand. Blood's dripping down. I says, yeah. Ow. Tucked it away like that. They looked at me. They were mesmerized with terror. I said, now everybody go to work, okay? Jenkins calls me and he says, I just heard about that. He said, you could die doing something like that. I said, well, I don't think I'm going to die. It's only a snake's head. What the hell? Not a poisonous snake anyhow. Yeah, bit crunchy, but no big deal. He says, yeah, I underestimated you. He says, you'll be fine.
You're like Ozzy Osbourne when he ate the bat, right? I mean, there's some times that someone's legend is just secured.
I was, yeah. So next thing I did was I took secret Cantonese lessons and learned to speak pretty good Cantonese, but I didn't speak it to any of them. Mostly I spoke it to.
So they had no idea you could understand what you could.
No, so I just shut my mouth. But I'm running around with some beautiful Chinese girls all the time, and you know they cost very little, and which is another
They
thing.
cost very little.
No, it was nothing.
Yeah, they were giving you lessons.
Yes, right. Yeah. Well, love making lessons, you know, and so it was all very good, but.
I knew Susie Wong was in there somewhere.
Lots of Susie Wongs, you know.
Yeah, with the slit skirts.
Which brings me to another thing with Orientals, with the Chinese anyhow. We sort of abhor the fact that women will charge to, if you're charged to have sex with them, well, they call them hookers, and it's looked down on to be a hooker. Not so in China. If you charge for your body, that just means you're smarter than the next woman who doesn't. Maybe they don't charge for their body because the body's not good looking enough or something. But Chinese women had look on themselves as this is a gift they have, and they can use this gift to get money from men. That's a good idea, and it's something tradable. Like as I saw it. As they worked it, it was like some people are born with brains and some people are born without. Well, they're born with tits and a beautiful pussy, so why shouldn't they market that just like somebody else markets their brain? They don't see a big, you know, it's not a, we make it a moral issue, and I guess that's to do with, you know, to do with church or something, or religion or something, but they don't have that sort of religion.
They also have a time clock. You know, there's only so many years they can do that.
Yeah.
So they better be saving their money for what they do afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Yeah. It's an interesting juxtaposition.
They don't have the Puritan ethic.
No.
To think of that as something negative.
But then they're very loyal and very, in other ways, extremely loyal. And they'd screw you if you screwed them. And they'd make a point of screwing you better than you screwed them. But if you didn't screw them and you just played it straight, they were very, very, very faithful and very straight. It was an odd place to be. But I left there because I was enjoying that speed too much, and I thought, I'm out of here. So I went to London and all over the place and just travelled all around Europe and didn't do another drug, although have enjoyed drinking and did enjoy drinking until I quit, like I told you. And I became the beer drinking champion of Sydney. I didn't become the beer drinking champion of Munich, however.
Never.
I didn't even rate. I was really disappointed in that. But I went back to Australia and I won. Because I won, I got hired because I was a champion. Mm-hmm. Well, Pat, we hit some good topics there. Now, you're an amazing artist. one of the world's great tattooists. How do people contact you?
Well, there's a couple different ways. My main website is luckyfish.com, and that's sort of the brag of the myth. So you can read about me and what I like to do and my enthusiasms. And then Lucky Fish Art, which is where I sell, at this point, well over 2,000 images that I've done as original tattoos. And if you live at a distance and you want something, specifically a Celtic tattoo or something Pictish, those are the ones that I like the best. And I can draw those, and maybe your local artist can't draw them, but they can do it if they have a pattern. So that's luckyfishart.com. And I'm on Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook, and I try to be modern. And, you know, when I'm not doing any of that, I'm riding in my Colin Dangaard mule saddle and being the antidote of being out in the real world on my mule. So I thank Colin for making me more secure when I'm riding and more confident, and for being a role model for me.
Thank you very much, Pat. I'm Colin Dangaard, and I have the Australian Stock Saddle Company. You can find that online on australianstocksaddlecompany.com or colindangaard.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Pinterest and wherever else I can hang my shingle. And my phone number is 818-309-8125. That's 818-309-8125. Give me a call. I'm searching to my cell phone and I'll sell you something. Thanks, mate. Bye.
For there was time beyond time and space, of pleasure